this time over a funding fight over disaster aid. It gets complicated. Suffice it to say, I've got Republican Senator Rand Paul here. Senator, bottom line, Republicans have been pushing for any amount in FEMA aid, emergency aid, to be paid for. Democrats are balking at it, but this argument could shut the government down. Is that true?
Well, you know, we're borrowing $40,000 a second, so I think we do need to pay for anything that we want to spend up here. It has to come from somewhere, and there are repercussions to debt. So, yeah, I think it should be offset. They had a proposal here for many years called pay-as-you-go. The only problem is they exempted 96% of spending from it, so they don't to reform government only when they bump up against deadlines. There's always a new deadline. In 6 months, there'll be another new deadline. So this is nothing new. Now, the fact that the leadership waits till the very end to bring these things up makes it more of consequence. But I would say, yes, you need to pay for things. If the disaster relief funding is more urgent than maybe building a bike trail or building a windmill or giving $500 million to Solyndra, I think then you make those priorities. That's what we should do as legislators, is decide what is of most imminence, what is most urgent.
All right, I want to get into those particulars in just a second, Senator, but if you'll indulge me one more time on this possible shutdown, how likely do you think it is? We're only, what, about 10 days away from facing it?
I would say unlikely. I think an agreement will be achieved. The House has already agreed to the emergency funding, but they want it at a responsible level, and that's where the debate is. But, you know, see, we have a request from the Democratic leadership in the Senate for $7 billion, but we don't know exactly where that's coming from or what that means. So really, even for emergency funding, it ought to be done responsibly. We should account for where the money's coming from and where it's going to. You remember after Katrina, we sent money to inmates in the Baton Rouge prison. So I think we really do need to be more responsible with our money.
Well, the inmates were happy. Could I get your take on the president's posture and all of this, and what some are calling the son of stimulus, and he's going to be pushing a lot more in the infrastructure route beginning tomorrow and over the next few days. What do you make of that, and whether this time the White House feels it has a more supporting public?
Well, the interesting thing is he's coming to my state tomorrow to inspect one of the bridges in northern Kentucky, and I'm going to be there, and he invited me to come, and I'm also going to be there with a suggestion of legislation that I will be introducing that would pay for an emergency fund to fund our bridges. Right now, we set aside 10% for bike paths and turtle tunnels and squirrel sanctuaries and all this craziness. I'm going to say let's take 10% of the highway fund, set it aside for emergencies, and then have a national priority list and say if this bridge is closed down, that's a national emergency. Let's fix it as a priority.
What happens? I know we've done this before with gasoline taxes, and in your state and many other states, tolls for tunnels and bridges. All of this meant, in various state initiatives, a number of cracks of the federal government at this, for roads and bridges, again and again. So what has happened to all that money designed for that purpose? Where did it go?
Well, like in my state, $28 million last year was spent on movie theaters, bike paths, beautification projects, and that's happening in every state. And this is what has to stop. We have bridges. We had one fall down in Minneapolis. We have one closed in Louisville, and we have one crumbling in northern Kentucky. This is a national emergency, but I think at the same time, we can't send money overseas in foreign welfare through foreign aid when we can't fix our own bridges. We shouldn't be building nations in Afghanistan when our bridges are closed down in our major metropolitan areas. So we do have to make a decision, and I've got a solution. If the president's willing to work with me, I'm willing to work with him to say this is how we do it. We won't have to wait to see if his jobs plan can pass, which it well may not be able to pass, but I guarantee the bill that I'm proposing could pass, and if he really wants to fix our bridges, he'll invite me down. I've asked for a ride on his plane tomorrow. He'll invite me down. We'll talk about the Bridges Fund, and we could fix it tomorrow if he's willing to work with the other side.
That I'd like to see. Cue me into that. But your dad is debating tomorrow night, and I noticed from the last debate that he and Texas Governor Rick Perry got in each other's face. And I'm wondering if it is now personal. These two really strongly just don't like each other.
You know, I think it's less than that. I think some of the pictures were representing more sort of tension than actually was there. I think if you've met my father many times, he's very mild-mannered and not very confrontational. He believes firmly in his ideals.
Yeah, but Governor Perry got in his face. I mean, I didn't even see a picture. I saw the video. So I'm just wondering what happened there. He's been mad at some of these spots. That is the governor. Your dad has run on him. And I'm wondering if we're going to see more of this tomorrow night, or whether your dad thinks he overstepped it. What?
Well, you know, you win elections by contrasting yourself. And the fact that my dad was one of Reagan's earliest supporters, and that Al Gore or Rick Perry was one of Al Gore's earliest supporters, that we think does provide a contrast. And if people know that, they may well look further into Rick Perry's record to find out that he was for mandatory vaccines for sexually transmitted disease on 12-year-old girls. And we just really think there ought to be some examination of Governor Perry's record.
Okay, we'll watch. Thank you, Senator. Good seeing you. And let me know if you hop on a ride with the president. It would be interesting to see.
We will.
All right. Is it any wonder America